back to my channel. Welcome back to another video, my first video of 2021. Happy New Year to everyone. If you missed my last video, I discussed my 2020 TBR comparison, seeing what I had on my list compared to what I did and didn't read, and then some goals I have for 2021. This, as the title says, is a mini version of that. So without further ado, I present to you my December wrap-up and January TBR. The first book I finished was From Rufio to Zuko. I gave this 4 stars. It is the autobiography of Dante Basco. For those of you who don't know, he played, obviously, Rufio from Hook, and obviously again, voiced Zuko from Avatar The Last Airbender, as well as a bunch of other roles. I don't really read too many biographies, but I like the way he wrote his. It feels like we really sit down and have like a raw and real conversation with him about his life as a Filipino American in Hollywood. It was so interesting to see how his time in Hollywood shaped him. You feel the discomfort he felt as he took roles of colored or queer folk. This was something that hit me the strongest. He's Filipino, but he always played Native American, Hispanic, or other Asian roles. He took all of this with such grace, and you can really see how it shaped him to grow and represent Asian American people, striving to make a place for the community and encouraging others to do the same. The last chapter in particular is amazing as he really speaks from the heart. Though this next book wasn't the very next one I read in December, I was inspired to pick it up after finishing From Rufio to Zuko. Another autobiography by an Asian American, I read Dear Girls by Ali Wong. She did very briefly mention Dante's name, which was kind of fun. Ali Wong is a hilarious comedian who doesn't pull her punches. She's kind of nasty, but very real, and I always have a good time watching her and now reading her book. This is her autobiography, but written like letters to her children. Some of the standout moments in this book was how she discussed her difficulty with childbirth and not feeling like you're alone, or the struggle you feel when thinking there's something wrong with your body. I also like the way she discussed being an Asian American. A moment in particular stood out to me was when she talked about the way people reacted to her food. You know, sometimes people are just raised off of different foods, and sometimes that food comes from places in the world where they aren't as fortunate, and how awful it is when privileged Americans call their food gross. This made me feel kind of put on the spot, which honestly it should. It's exactly how I would have reacted. This kind of perspective is something that people really need to find. I also love the push she makes for young adults to get out and go abroad. I myself went abroad in college and I completely agree. It's really a necessary adventure we should all take to get a new perspective on how the world really works, in particular economy and how people who aren't in the first world countries live. Lastly was her dissection into women, their role and expectations. Honestly, by now, I'm just exhausted with hearing how hard and dangerous it is for women. I can't imagine how absolutely fed up they are. I loved hearing her be so unapologetically feminine, challenging their roles, but also talking about the very real challenges and frustrations she always has to deal with. This theme is what I'm going to use to transition to my next book, which chronologically was the last book I read in 2020, and that is The Bear and the Nightingale. This book also exhausts me with how it treats women. This is set in Russia during the 1500s, where women are told what to do, how to behave, who to marry, and just be happy for it. That's the unfortunate life of our main character Vasya. In this chilling world full of Russian folklore, she has the blood of a witch with eyes that can see the fairy tale world the author pulled inspiration from. We see the disgusting fanaticism of religious zealots who take the innocence of Vasya and twist it into something evil. It's clear looking at history that this has happened a lot, and it's really heartbreaking. It's done very well in this book, displaying a very strong and courageous girl protecting her village when all they want to do is hurt and fear her. And fear is one of the strongest subjects in this book. The world is beautifully realized as it perfectly describes the cold and sometimes brutal lands, which is a perfect place to instill the fear that the characters in this book develop. I really enjoyed this book. The early parts of it were hard to get into because it's not really clear who the main characters are with the way it switches perspectives in an omnipresent fashion. It's also hard to tell what the plot even is at first. It seems to just be these people's lives for the most part, and it takes a while to see the plot as it's getting set up. All in all, it was perfectly atmospheric for the winter season. I look forward to getting to its sequel next winter. The next book I ended up finishing was Rhythm of War, one of my most anticipated reads of 2020. This is a massive book, and if you're a fan of the series, you've probably already read it and have had your fill of discussions and reviews. So I'll keep it brief and just say, I love this. I thought this was one of the most emotional in the series so far. It had some great plot points for some characters. It also had a huge amount of world building, really expanding on the Cosmere. It's the first time, that at least I can recall, that Sanderson speaks so freely about his interconnected worlds inside the books themselves. Lastly, I picked up The Arithmetist. This is a YA, for now, standalone from Brandon Sanderson. It takes place in a world similar to ours with some big geographical differences, as well as a magic system that involves some people being able to battle with chalk, drawing defenses and attacks and such. Our main character is not one of those people, but he really wishes he could be. He's actually quite intelligent and very knowledgeable on arithmancy, which leads him to being part of this investigation of disappearances of said arithmetists. I really like this a lot more than I thought. I can definitely see it as some anime akin to Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Fullmetal Alchemist, where they dramatically flip out their chalk and dynamically draw their attacks and defenses. You know how anime usually makes most mundane things seem kind of epic. The main character comes off more mature than Steelheart's protagonist if you need a comparison. I was quite interested by the mystery of the world. It was fun to see Joel, the main character, Nancy Drew himself through this plot. Very intriguing and short, which I quite enjoyed. So those are the books I finished the year with. I loved all of the high ratings, but now it's time to focus on the future and look at the books I want to get to in January. Okay, this is gonna seem ambitious, but here goes nothing. First off is my attempt to finish some of the mangas or graphic novels I have laying around, starting with Dean Angel. This has been one of my favorite manga series, which should be difficult to say considering I haven't read it since like middle school or high school. So we're gonna see how this holds up. Spoiler alert though, I've already read the first one and so far it hasn't aged well. But this story is about a boy who discovers that his bloodline contains the DNA of a phantom thief. Whenever our main character, Daisuke, feels emotions of love, it triggers his transformation into Dark, the said phantom thief. So basically, it's just a story about this kid trying to deal with his emotions while moonlighting as an art thief. As a goal for mine in 2021, it was to actually get to some rereads, and I would definitely count this as one. So I'll probably end up picking up maybe 2 volumes or so of these each month. Oddly enough, the series I believe dropped off and never really finished, like back in the late 2000s. But then recently I think they actually revitalized it, and I think that the end of the series is coming out like early this year, so I thought it was a really good timing to pick this up. I will also be reading Fullmetal Alchemist. I love these awesome like Full Metal editions, and though I've seen most of the show, I've not actually read any of the mangas. I read the first one last year, so I want to continue that into 2021. Again, probably picking up about 2 to 3 volumes a month. This story is about brothers, both alchemists, as they try to right a wrong they performed in their childhood. This story is really fun, but also tragic, with some of the best characters, political intrigue, and adventure. It just has so much. And unlike Dean Angel, the first volume did not disappoint. The next book I want to get to is The Tower of Nero, the finale to the Trials of Apollo series by Rick Riordan. I've talked about this series quite a bit on my channel. I love the Greek god Apollo, he's one of my favorite gods, and I was really excited there's this whole series dedicated to him and his journeys. I'm looking forward to finally seeing the conclusion to his adventure. Next, coming highly recommended from Elliot Brooks, is Fireborn. I also wanted to pick this up as it is inspired by Russian lore, like Bear and the Nightingale, so I figured I wanted to keep that trend going. From what I know, this series follows a character who's orphaned after her parents were killed, and she ends up going to the same orphanage as a kid whose parents were the one that murdered hers. It's supposed to be kind of tragic and have a lot of political intrigue, and oh yeah, dragons. After that, coming highly recommended from my friend Isaac over at Books with Ike, is Timekeeper. From what I can tell and remember, this book is a Victorian setting, placed in a world where time works around these like clock towers, and our main character is someone who like manages or maintains one of these clock towers. It's also a queer story, which is always a plus, and I'm very much looking forward to this. Lastly is a reread, which I've wanted to get to for a long time, and this is Peter and the Starcatchers. This is a retelling of Peter Pan where it tweaks the origins and lore of how Peter and Neverland got its powers. It was one of my favorite series in high school, and I've only read 3 of the 4 books so far. The general plot is that Peter and the Lost Boys end up on a ship with Starcatchers, an organization that finds fallen stars and like protects them, I think, or something like that. The stars, I believe, are a substance kind of like sand, and it has magical properties. It's what makes Neverland magical, allows Peter to fly, and creates Tinkerbell. I can't really remember what happens in which book, but I am excited to return to this magical story. So that's it. That's my ambitious January TBR. Let me know if you read any of these books and what you think. Let me know if you have your own wrap-up in TBR I can go check out. But yeah, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you had a great new year, and I will see you all next time. Bye now.
Watch it fill you full of dread till you go.